Bear Cub was trapped in a landfill landslide of trash. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning air at Riverside Landfill carried the heavy smell of rotting food and old plastic. Maya Chen pushed her 14-month-old daughter Lily's stroller along the gravel path that ran beside their small trailer home. The landfill stretched out like a mountain of forgotten things, growing taller each day as trucks dumped more waste. Lily babbled happily in her stroller, pointing her tiny fingers at the seagulls that circled overhead. Maya smiled at her daughter's innocent wonder, even in this place that most people tried to avoid. They lived here because Maya's husband Jake worked as a supervisor at the landfill, and the company provided the trailer for free. "Look at the birdies, baby," Maya whispered to Lily, who clapped her hands together. Jake was already at work somewhere deep in the landfill with his crew. Maya could hear the distant rumble of bulldozers pushing trash into neat piles. She walked this path every morning to get fresh air before the day got too hot and the smell became too strong. As they reached the edge of where the newest section of trash had been dumped, Maya noticed something moving near the bottom of one of the larger piles. At first, she thought it might be a stray dog looking for food, but when she looked closer, she saw black fur and small ears. "Oh my," she breathed, stopping the stroller. A bear cub, no bigger than a medium-sized dog, was digging through a pile of garbage bags. It pulled at something with its tiny paws, completely focused on whatever it had found. The cub looked thin, like it hadn't eaten in days. Maya had heard that black bears sometimes came down from the hills when food was hard to find, but she had never seen one this close, and definitely never seen a cub alone without its mother nearby. Lily made a soft cooing sound and pointed toward the cub. Somehow, even at her young age, she seemed to sense that this small creature was different from the usual cats and dogs they saw around the trailer park. The cub looked up for a moment, as if it had heard Lily's voice. Its dark eyes met Maya's across the distance. There was something heartbreaking about the way it looked at them. Not afraid, but tired and lonely. "Where's your mama, little one?" Maya whispered. She knew she should probably call Jake on his radio and tell him about the cub. The landfill had rules about wild animals. But something made her hesitate. The cub looked so small and helpless, and it wasn't bothering anyone. The pile of trash where the cub was digging sat at an odd angle. Maya noticed that some of the bags near the top looked like they might slide down at any moment. The whole section seemed unstable, like it had been dumped too quickly without being properly arranged. As if reading her thoughts, Lily pointed again at the cub and made an urgent little sound. It was the same sound she made when she was trying to tell her parents that something was wrong, like when her favorite toy had fallen behind the couch or when she was hungry but couldn't reach her food. Maya looked back at the cub. It had found what looked like an old sandwich and was eating it carefully, making small, satisfied sounds. But as it moved to get a better grip on its food, some of the trash bags above it shifted slightly. "Be careful, baby bear," Maya said quietly. The warning came too late. As the cub stepped backward to avoid a sharp piece of metal, its weight shifted the balance of the trash pile. Several heavy bags near the top began to slide downward, picking up speed as they tumbled. Maya watched in horror as more and more debris joined the slide. Old furniture, broken appliances, and dozens of garbage bags all came crashing down toward where the little cub was standing. The cub looked up just in time to see the avalanche of trash heading straight for it. It let out a high-pitched cry, not quite a roar, but a sound full of fear and confusion. Then everything happened at once. The landslide hit the cub, burying it under a mountain of waste. The sound echoed across the landfill like thunder. Dust and small pieces of paper floated in the air where the pile had collapsed. Maya's heart was pounding. She looked down at Lily, who had gone completely quiet. The baby's eyes were wide, staring at the spot where they had just seen the cub playing and eating. Then, from somewhere deep under the pile of trash, came a muffled crying sound. The cub was alive, but it was trapped. Maya quickly pulled out her phone to call Jake, but realized she had no signal. The tall piles of metal and electronics in the landfill often blocked phone reception. She looked around desperately, hoping to see one of the workers, but this section was too far from where the main crew was operating. The crying from under the trash pile continued, getting weaker with each passing minute. Maya could see small movements in the debris. The cub was trying to dig its way out, but the weight of everything on top was too much for such a small animal. "We have to help," Maya said to Lily, though she knew her baby couldn't understand. But Lily seemed to understand anyway. The little girl made urgent sounds and pointed at the trash pile with both hands. Maya parked the stroller safely away from the unstable area and walked closer to where the cub was buried. She could hear its frightened whimpering more clearly now. The sound broke her heart. She began pulling away pieces of trash from the top of the pile. Old newspapers, empty bottles, broken toys. But as she worked, Maya realized something that made her blood run cold. The trash pile wasn't just heavy, it was dangerous. Sharp pieces of metal stuck out at odd angles. Broken glass sparkled in the morning sunlight. And worse, some of the bags felt warm and smelled chemical-like, as if they contained things that shouldn't have been thrown away with regular garbage. Maya's hands were already getting cut from the sharp edges, but she couldn't stop. Every few seconds she heard the cub's weak cries, reminding her that a living creature was depending on her. Behind her, Lily had started making a new sound. Not crying, but a rhythmic, cooing noise, like she was trying to sing. Maya glanced back and saw something that made her pause in amazement. Lily had somehow gotten out of her stroller. The safety straps were still buckled, but the clever baby had wiggled free. Now, Lily was sitting on the ground, facing the trash pile, making her soft, singing sounds. It was the same melody Maya hummed to her every night before bed, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her years ago. "Lily, honey, you need to stay in your stroller," Maya said. But as she spoke, she noticed something incredible. The cub's crying had gotten quieter, not because it was getting weaker, but because it seemed to be listening to Lily's lullaby. Maya continued digging, her hands now bleeding from several small cuts. She had cleared away about 3 feet of debris when she saw something that made her heart stop. A large piece of an old refrigerator was balanced precariously above where the cub was trapped. If it fell, it would crush the small animal instantly. She tried to move the refrigerator piece, but it was far too heavy. As she struggled with it, the whole section of trash pile shifted slightly. More bags tumbled down, and Maya heard the cub let out a panicked yelp. Lily's lullaby got louder, as if she sensed the danger increasing. The baby had crawled closer to the trash pile, completely unafraid. Maya wanted to pick her up and move her to safety, but she was afraid that leaving the cub alone even for a minute might be the difference between life and death. That's when Maya heard another sound that made her freeze. From somewhere in the distance, deeper in the landfill, came a low, rumbling growl. It wasn't the sound of machinery. It was the sound of a very large, very angry animal. Maya looked toward where the sound had come from and saw movement in the shadows between 2 large trash mounds. Something big and dark was moving toward them. As it got closer, Maya could make out the shape of a full-grown black bear. The mother bear had found them. Maya's first instinct was to grab Lily and run, but the baby was now sitting right next to the trash pile where the cub was buried. If Maya moved suddenly, she might startle the mother bear and make the situation even more dangerous. The mother bear approached slowly, her nose in the air, sniffing for her cub's scent. When she reached the edge of the collapsed trash pile, she let out a sound Maya had never heard before. A deep, mournful moan that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. She had found where her baby was buried. The mother bear began digging frantically, using her powerful claws to tear through the garbage much faster than Maya ever could. But her movements were making the pile even more unstable. The refrigerator piece wobbled dangerously overhead. Maya knew she had to do something, but she was terrified. The mother bear was less than 10 feet away, completely focused on finding her cub. Maya had heard stories about how dangerous mother bears could be when protecting their young. But then Lily did something that changed everything. The baby crawled right up to the mother bear and placed her tiny hand on the bear's thick fur. Maya's heart nearly stopped. She opened her mouth to scream, to somehow distract the bear from her daughter, but no sound came out. The mother bear stopped digging and looked down at Lily. For a long moment, the two stared at each other. Maya was sure she was about to witness something terrible. Instead, the mother bear made a soft chuffing sound, almost like she was acknowledging Lily's presence. Then she went back to digging, but more carefully this time, as if she understood that the human baby was trying to help too. Maya slowly moved closer, reaching for Lily while trying not to startle the bear. But as she got within arm's reach of her daughter, the refrigerator piece finally gave way. It crashed down with a tremendous bang, landing exactly where the bear cub was trapped. The mother bear roared in anguish, a sound so heartbreaking that Maya felt tears streaming down her face. But then, impossibly, they heard something from under the new pile of debris. Not the cub's crying, something different. The sound of small claws scraping against metal. The refrigerator piece had landed at an angle, creating a small space underneath it. The cub wasn't crushed. It was in a tiny air pocket, still alive but now trapped even deeper. Lily clapped her hands together and made excited babbling sounds, as if she understood that the cub was okay. The mother bear seemed to understand too. She sniffed at the edges of the refrigerator piece and began digging with renewed energy. Maya realized that if they were going to save the cub, she and the mother bear would have to work together. It was the most terrifying and amazing thought she had ever had. She picked up Lily and moved her to a safe distance, then came back and began helping the mother bear dig. Working side by side with a wild animal felt surreal, but Maya had stopped thinking about her own safety. All that mattered was the small frightened creature trapped beneath tons of garbage. As they dug, Maya started to notice something strange about some of the trash they were uncovering. Mixed in with the normal household garbage were bags that looked different. Newer, cleaner, and marked with labels she couldn't read in the dim light. One of the bags split open as the mother bear's claw caught it, and Maya saw something that made her stomach turn. Inside were dozens of small glass vials filled with different colored liquids. Some of the vials were broken, and the contents had leaked out, creating small puddles that steamed slightly in the cool morning air. Maya realized with growing horror that someone had been illegally dumping chemical waste in the landfill, mixing it with regular garbage to hide it. The warm, chemical smell she had noticed earlier wasn't just rotting food. It was dangerous industrial waste, and the bear cub was trapped right in the middle of it. The mother bear seemed to sense the danger too. She sniffed at the broken vials and backed away slightly, making worried sounds. But she couldn't abandon her cub, even if the area was contaminated. Maya looked back at Lily, who was still sitting where she had been placed, continuing her soft lullaby. The baby seemed completely unaware of how dangerous the situation had become. Maya realized that not only did they need to save the cub from being crushed, but they needed to get it away from the chemical contamination before it made the small animal seriously sick. Working faster now, Maya and the mother bear continued digging. Maya tried to avoid touching the leaked chemicals directly, but it was almost impossible. Her hands were burning from both the cuts and the chemical exposure. Finally, they could see a small opening in the debris. The mother bear pushed her nose into the gap and made encouraging sounds. From deep inside, the cub responded with weak but hopeful chirps. Maya could see that the opening was big enough for the cub to squeeze through, but something was still holding it back. She peered into the gap and saw the problem. The cub's back leg was caught under a heavy piece of metal. The mother bear was too big to fit through the opening, and Maya's arms weren't long enough to reach the trapped leg. They were so close to saving the cub, but they couldn't finish the rescue. That's when Lily made a sound that got both Maya and the mother bear's attention. The baby had crawled back over to them and was pointing at something behind Maya. Maya turned and saw a man walking quickly toward them from the direction of the main landfill operation. It was Jake, her husband, and he looked worried and confused. "Maya," he called out, "what are you doing over here, and what is that bear doing so close to you?" Maya had never been so happy to see anyone in her life. But as Jake got closer, she realized that explaining the situation was going to be complicated. How could she tell him that she had been working together with a wild bear to save its cub from a pile of illegally dumped chemical waste? The mother bear had heard Jake approaching and was starting to look nervous. Maya was afraid she might run away, leaving her cub still trapped. "Jake, stop," Maya called out. "Don't come any closer right now. I need to explain something to you." But Jake had already seen enough to know something was very wrong. His wife was covered in cuts and dirt. Their baby was sitting on the ground near a pile of dangerous-looking debris, and a full-grown black bear was less than 5 feet away from both of them. Jake reached for the radio on his belt, probably to call for help or report the bear sighting. But Maya knew that if other workers came with trucks and noise and chaos, the mother bear would panic. She might run and never come back for her cub. "Please, Jake, just listen to me for 1 minute," Maya said desperately. "There's a baby bear trapped under this pile, and its mother is trying to save it. If we scare her away now, the baby will die." Jake stopped with his hand on his radio. He looked at Maya, then at the mother bear, then at Lily, who was still humming her lullaby. "Maya, that's a wild animal. It could attack at any moment." "She won't hurt us," Maya said, surprising herself with how certain she sounded. "She knows we're trying to help her baby." To prove her point, Maya slowly reached into the opening they had dug and tried once more to free the cub's trapped leg. This time, the mother bear moved closer and used her claw to help guide Maya's hand to the right spot. Jake watched in amazement as his wife and the wild bear worked together. When Maya finally freed the cub's leg and the small animal scrambled up through the opening into its mother's waiting paws, Jake understood that he had just witnessed something extraordinary. The mother bear nuzzled her cub, checking it for injuries. The cub was covered in dirt and garbage, and it was limping slightly, but it was alive and seemed to be okay overall. But Maya noticed that the cub was breathing strangely, taking quick, shallow breaths. The chemical exposure was starting to affect the small animal. "Jake, we need to get them away from this area," Maya said urgently. "Someone's been dumping chemical waste here. The cub needs fresh air and clean water." Jake looked at the broken vials and steaming puddles Maya was pointing to. His expression changed from confusion to anger. "I knew something was wrong when I saw the readings from this section yesterday," he said. "The soil temperature was too high, and there were chemical traces in the groundwater samples. Maya realized that Jake had been investigating the illegal dumping without knowing that it had become a life-or-death situation for the bear family. The mother bear seemed to understand that the humans were trying to help. She picked up her cub gently in her mouth and started walking away from the contaminated area. But after just a few steps, the cub made distressed sounds, and the mother bear stopped. The cub was too sick to travel far. The chemical exposure and trauma of being trapped had weakened it significantly. Maya looked at Jake, then at Lily, who had crawled over to where the bear family had stopped. "We can't just let them leave," Maya said. "That baby bear needs help, and its mother doesn't know where to find it." Jake was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks of getting more involved with wild animals against the clear need for someone to help the sick cub. Finally, he spoke. "There's a wildlife rehabilitation center about 20 minutes from here. Dr. Sarah Martinez runs it. She specializes in treating animals that have been exposed to toxins." Maya felt a surge of hope. "Can we call her?" "The phone service is better near the main office," Jake said. "But Maya, even if she agrees to help, how are we going to convince a wild bear to let us take her cub to a veterinarian?" That question hung in the air as they all looked at the mother bear, who was gently grooming her sick cub while keeping a watchful eye on the humans. Lily, still sitting nearby, continued her soft lullaby, and somehow, in that moment, Maya believed that they would find a way to help this bear family, no matter how impossible it seemed. The mother bear suddenly lifted her head and looked directly at Jake. Her dark eyes seemed to be studying him, trying to decide if he was a threat or another potential helper. Jake stood very still, remembering everything he had learned about bear behavior during his safety training. "Maya," Jake whispered quietly, "I'm going to walk very slowly back to the main office to call Dr. Martinez. Can you stay here and keep an eye on them?" But before Maya could answer, the cub made a sound that stopped everyone in their tracks. It wasn't the normal chirping or whimpering they had been hearing. This was a wet, gasping sound, like the small animal was struggling to breathe. The mother bear immediately became agitated, nuzzling her cub more urgently. Maya could see that the little bear's breathing was getting more labored with each passing minute. The chemical exposure was getting worse, not better. "Jake, there isn't time to go back to the office," Maya said, her voice tight with worry. "Look at the cub, it's getting sicker." Jake pulled out his radio and tried to reach the main office, but all he got was static. The electronic interference from the landfill was too strong in this area. Lily crawled closer to the bear family, making soft cooing sounds. The mother bear watched the baby approach but didn't move away. Instead, she made a low rumbling sound that seemed almost like she was talking to Lily. Maya noticed something strange. Every time Lily made a sound, the mother bear would respond with a similar sound. It was like they were having a conversation, even though neither could understand the other's language. "Jake, look at this," Maya whispered. Jake watched in amazement as Lily reached out and gently touched the sick cub's paw. The mother bear allowed it, even moving slightly to give Lily better access. The cub opened its eyes and looked at the human baby, making weak but curious sounds. "I've never seen anything like this," Jake murmured. "It's like they understand each other." Suddenly, Maya had an idea. "Jake, what if we don't try to take the cub away from its mother? What if we bring Dr. Martinez here instead?" "Maya, this is a landfill. Veterinarians don't make house calls to garbage dumps." "But if we explain the situation, maybe she would, especially if we tell her about the illegal chemical dumping. This could be evidence of a serious environmental crime." Jake considered this. Dr. Martinez had helped the landfill before when they had found injured wildlife. She was known for being willing to go anywhere to help an animal in need. "It's worth a try," he said. but I need to get to higher ground to get a phone signal." As Jake started to leave, the mother bear stood up abruptly. She had heard something that the humans hadn't noticed yet. Her ears were pointed toward the main road that led to the landfill entrance. Maya listened carefully and finally heard it too. The sound of truck engines getting closer. Someone was coming. "Jake, who else is supposed to be working today?" "Just my regular crew, but they're all in the north section today. These trucks are coming from the wrong direction." The sound of the engines got louder, and Maya could see dust clouds rising from the access road. Multiple vehicles were approaching the landfill. The mother bear was clearly becoming nervous. She picked up her cub and started to walk away, but the small animal cried out in pain from being moved. The chemical exposure had made it too weak to be carried safely. "They're going to run," Maya said desperately. "If those trucks scare the mother bear, she'll try to carry her cub to safety, but the movement might make the cub even sicker." Jake grabbed his radio again and tried to contact his crew. This time he got through, but the conversation he had made Maya's blood run cold. "Boss, we've got a problem," came the voice of Tommy, Jake's lead operator. "There are 3 unmarked trucks that just drove past us heading toward the east section. When we tried to radio them, they didn't respond. And boss, these trucks look like the ones we saw dumping here at night last week." Maya felt her heart sink. The people responsible for the illegal chemical dumping were coming back, and they were heading straight toward where she, Jake, Lily, and the bear family were standing. "Jake, we have to get out of here," Maya said urgently. "If those people see us near the evidence of their illegal dumping, who knows what they might do?" But even as she said it, Maya looked at the sick cub and knew they couldn't leave. The small animal wouldn't survive much longer without medical help. The mother bear seemed to sense the approaching danger too. She was pacing back and forth, clearly torn between staying to help her sick cub and fleeing to protect both of them from whatever threat was coming. Lily, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly pointed toward a cluster of large drainage pipes that were stacked nearby, waiting to be buried in the landfill. The pipes were big enough for people to crawl through, and they led under a hill of garbage toward the other side of the landfill. "Maya, those pipes," Jake said, understanding immediately. "We could hide in there until the trucks leave." But would a wild bear follow humans into a confined space? And would the sick cub survive being moved through the narrow pipes? The sound of truck doors slamming echoed across the landfill. Male voices shouted to each other, getting closer by the minute. Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She walked slowly toward the mother bear and held out her arms, as if asking to carry the cub. The mother bear stared at her for a long moment. Maya could hear the footsteps of multiple people walking over the uneven terrain, heading in their direction. "Please," Maya whispered to the bear, "let us help you save your baby." The mother bear looked at her cub, then at Maya, then at Lily, who was still humming her lullaby. Finally, incredibly, she gently placed the sick cub in Maya's arms. The moment Maya felt the weight of the small bear, she was overwhelmed with emotion. The cub was so light, so fragile. Its fur was matted with chemicals and dirt, and its breathing was rapid and shallow, but its dark eyes looked up at her with what seemed like trust. "Jake, get Lily. We need to move now." Jake scooped up his daughter while Maya carefully cradled the bear cub. The mother bear followed closely behind them as they made their way toward the drainage pipes. As they reached the entrance to the first pipe, Maya could hear the voices of the men getting much closer. One of them was shouting angrily about evidence and cleanup. "Someone's been digging around here," a rough voice called out. "The chemical bags are all torn open." "Find out who it was," another voice replied. "We can't afford to have anyone discovering what we've been dumping here." Maya's heart was racing as she crawled into the drainage pipe, still holding the sick cub. The pipe was just wide enough for an adult to move through on hands and knees. Behind her, she could hear Jake encouraging Lily to crawl like it was a game. The most amazing thing was that the mother bear was following them. The large animal had squeezed herself into the pipe entrance and was crawling behind Jake and Lily, making soft, reassuring sounds to her cub. The pipe was dark and smelled like old concrete, but it was clean compared to the contaminated area they had just left. Maya could feel the bear cub's breathing starting to slow down slightly, as if getting away from the chemical fumes was already helping. They crawled through the pipe for what felt like forever, though it was probably only a few minutes. Maya could hear the men's voices echoing behind them, but the sound was getting fainter. Finally, they reached the other end of the pipe, which opened up near a section of the landfill that was scheduled for closure and replanting. There were actual trees here, and grass, and clean air. Maya carefully sat down and looked at the cub in her arms. Its breathing seemed a little better, but its eyes were still unfocused and it felt too warm. The mother bear emerged from the pipe and immediately came over to check on her baby. She sniffed the cub all over, then looked at Maya with what could only be described as gratitude. Jake crawled out last, carrying Lily, who was giggling like the whole thing had been a wonderful adventure. "Maya, we need to call Dr. Martinez now," Jake said. "I think I can get a signal from here." But as Jake pulled out his phone, they heard the sound of truck engines starting up again. The illegal dumpers were leaving, but Maya wondered what they had found at the contaminated site. Had they seen evidence that someone had been there? Jake managed to get through to Dr. Martinez's emergency line. Maya listened to his side of the conversation with growing hope. "Dr. Martinez, this is Jake Chen from Riverside Landfill. We have an emergency situation with a bear cub that's been exposed to industrial chemicals." "Yes, I know how that sounds." "No, we can't bring the cub to you because the mother bear is here too, and she won't leave her baby." "Yes, I understand this is unusual." There was a long pause while Dr. Martinez spoke. "Really? You'll come here? Thank you so much. We're in the east section, near the drainage pipes by the reforestation area. About 30 minutes, we'll be here." Jake hung up and turned to Maya with a huge smile. "She's coming. Dr. Martinez said she's treated chemical exposure in wildlife before, and she's curious about the illegal dumping situation. She's bringing portable equipment and medication." Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face. The bear cub was going to get the help it needed. But their relief was short-lived. From the direction they had just come, they heard the sound of truck engines again. This time, the trucks seemed to be driving around the perimeter of the landfill, as if the men were searching for something. Or someone. The mother bear heard the engines too. She stood up and positioned herself between the sound and her cub, every muscle in her body tense and ready to fight if necessary. Maya realized that their problems were far from over. The illegal dumpers knew that someone had discovered their operation. They were looking for witnesses. And Maya, Jake, and Lily were the only people who could identify them and testify about what they had seen. Lily, still blissfully unaware of the danger, reached out and patted the bear cub's head gently. The small animal made a weak but contented sound in response. Looking at her daughter's innocent face, Maya felt a fierce determination rise up inside her. These criminals had not only endangered wildlife and the environment with their illegal dumping, but now they were threatening her family. "Jake," she said quietly, "when Dr. Martinez gets here, we need to document everything. Take pictures of the cub's condition, get soil samples from the contaminated area, record everything we remember about those men and their trucks." "Maya, if these people are dangerous enough to dump toxic chemicals illegally, they might be dangerous in other ways too. Maybe we should just focus on helping the cub and let the authorities handle the rest." But Maya shook her head. This bear family almost died because of what those men did, and how many other animals have been hurt by their dumping. How much poison have they put into the groundwater? Someone has to hold them accountable. The mother bear seemed to sense the tension in Maya's voice. She moved closer and sat down next to Maya, as if offering support and protection. In that moment, Maya felt like she and this wild bear had formed an unbreakable bond. They were both mothers, both willing to do anything to protect their young. And now they were both witnesses to a crime that could have killed both of their babies. The sound of truck engines was getting closer again. Maya counted at least 3 different vehicles circling the landfill. The men were definitely searching for something. Jake looked at his watch. Dr. Martinez should be here in about 15 minutes. We just need to stay hidden until then. But as he spoke, they heard a new sound that made everyone freeze. Footsteps. Someone was walking through the grass toward their hiding spot behind the trees. The mother bear immediately moved into a defensive position, placing herself between the approaching footsteps and both her cub and the human family. Maya held the sick cub closer to her chest, feeling its rapid heartbeat against her hands. Lily seemed to finally sense that something was wrong, and she reached for her mother with worried sounds. Jake picked up his daughter and motioned for Maya to move deeper into the trees. But before they could move, a figure appeared through the branches. It was a man Maya had never seen before, wearing dirty work clothes and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He stopped when he saw them, and his expression changed from confusion to anger. "Well, well," he said in a voice that was both friendly and threatening. "Looks like we found our little spy problem." The mother bear let out a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. The man took a step back, clearly not expecting to encounter a wild bear. "Easy there, folks," he said, holding up his hands. "I just want to have a little chat about what you might have seen over by that trash pile this morning." Maya's mind was racing. This man was definitely one of the illegal dumpers, and he had somehow tracked them down. But he seemed nervous about the mother bear, which might give them an advantage. "We haven't seen anything," Jake said carefully. "We were just out for a morning walk with our baby." The man laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Right, a morning walk that ended up with you folks crawling through drainage pipes with a wild bear. That's totally normal." He took another step closer, and the mother bear's growl got louder. Maya could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. "Here's what's going to happen," the man continued. "You're going to forget everything you saw this morning. You're going to take your little family and go home, and you're never going to mention any chemical spills or illegal dumping to anybody. Ever." "And if we don't?" Maya heard herself asking, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. The man's smile disappeared. "Lady, you're holding a sick bear cub in a landfill where all kinds of accidents can happen. It would be real unfortunate if something happened to your family while you were out here playing with dangerous wild animals." The threat was clear, but before anyone could respond, they heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. This one sounded different from the trucks, smaller, like a van or SUV. The man heard it too, and his expression changed to worry. "My associates and I, we don't like complications. You understand?" Dr. Martinez's voice called out from somewhere nearby. "Hello, Jake, I'm Dr. Martinez from the Wildlife Center. Where are you?" Maya felt a surge of hope. Help had arrived, but the man blocking their path didn't look worried anymore. He looked angry. "Looks like your little rescue party just got more complicated," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Maya didn't want to think about what he might be reaching for, but the mother bear had apparently decided she had heard enough threats. With a roar that seemed to shake the trees, the massive bear charged straight at the man. The man stumbled backward, his hand flying out of his jacket pocket as he lost his balance. Maya caught a glimpse of what he had been reaching for. Not a weapon, but a cell phone. He had been calling for backup. The mother bear stopped just short of actually attacking the man, but her message was clear. She stood on her hind legs, making herself look even more enormous, and let out another thunderous roar that echoed across the entire landfill. The man turned and ran, crashing through the trees and shouting into his phone. "Code Red! Code Red! We've got a situation here. There's a damn bear protecting them." Maya could hear Dr. Martinez's voice getting closer. "Jake?" I heard shouting. "Is everything okay?" "We're here," Jake called out. "But we have a complicated situation." Dr. Martinez appeared through the trees carrying 2 large medical cases and wearing thick protective gloves. She was a small woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. But Maya could immediately see the strength and confidence in her movements. Dr. Martinez stopped short when she saw the scene. Maya holding a sick bear cub, a massive mother bear standing protectively nearby, and Jake holding baby Lily, who was still humming her lullaby. "Well," Dr. Martinez said calmly, "this is definitely not what I expected when you called." "Dr. Martinez, the cub has been exposed to industrial chemicals," Maya said urgently. "Its breathing is getting worse, and it feels feverish." Without hesitation, Dr. Martinez set down her medical cases and opened one of them. "Let me see the little one. Can you bring it closer?" Maya looked at the mother bear, who was watching Dr. Martinez intently. Somehow, the wild animal seemed to understand that this new human was there to help. Maya slowly walked toward Dr. Martinez, still cradling the sick cub. The mother bear followed, staying close enough to intervene if necessary, but allowing the examination to proceed. Dr. Martinez put on her stethoscope and listened to the cub's breathing. Her expression grew serious. "This is chemical pneumonia," she said. "The poor thing has inhaled toxic fumes. We need to start treatment immediately." She pulled out a small oxygen mask designed for animals and gently placed it over the cub's nose and mouth. Almost immediately, the little bear's breathing began to slow down and become less labored. The mother bear watched this process with intense curiosity. She seemed to understand that the strange device was helping her baby breathe better. "Dr. Martinez," Jake said quietly, "there's something else you need to know. The people who dumped those chemicals are still here, and they threatened us. One of them just ran off to get help from his associates." Dr. Martinez looked up sharply. "Are you telling me this is an active crime scene?" "The illegal dumping is definitely criminal," Maya said. "But now I think they're planning to hurt us to keep us from reporting what we saw." As if summoned by her words, they heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching rapidly. Car doors slammed, and several male voices shouted orders to each other. "Spread out and find them," one voice commanded. "They can't have gone far, especially not with a wild bear." "What about the vet vehicle we saw on the access road?" another voice asked. "Find her too. We can't afford to have any witnesses to this cleanup operation." Dr. Martinez looked alarmed. "Jake, these people are talking about eliminating witnesses. This is much more serious than illegal dumping." The mother bear seemed to sense the approaching danger. She moved to position herself between her cub and the direction the voices were coming from, but Maya could see she was torn. Part of her wanted to flee with her baby, but the cub was still too sick to be moved safely. "Doctor Martinez, how long does the cub need the oxygen treatment?" Maya asked. "At least another 15 minutes to stabilize its breathing, but ideally, I'd like to give it some medication to reduce the inflammation in its lungs." 15 minutes felt like forever when they could hear armed men searching for them. Lily, who had been remarkably quiet during the medical examination, suddenly pointed toward a section of trees that Maya hadn't noticed before. Following her daughter's gaze, Maya saw what looked like an old maintenance shed hidden among the vegetation. "Jake, look where Lily is pointing." The shed was small and partially overgrown with vines, but it looked like it might provide better cover than the open trees where they were currently hiding. "It's worth a try," Jake said. "Dr. Martinez, can you treat the cub in there?" "As long as I have room to work, yes." Moving carefully, with Dr. Martinez carrying her medical equipment and Maya still holding the cub with its oxygen mask, they made their way toward the shed. The mother bear followed, constantly looking over her shoulder toward the sounds of the approaching search. The shed door was unlocked, and inside they found what appeared to be an old storage area for landscaping equipment. It was dusty but clean, with a small window that provided some light. Dr. Martinez immediately set up a makeshift treatment area on an old workbench. "Maya, I need you to keep holding the cub while I prepare an injection to help with the lung inflammation." As Dr. Martinez worked, they could hear the searchers getting closer. Footsteps crunched through the fallen leaves outside, and flashlight beams occasionally swept past the small window. "They went this way," a voice said, uncomfortably close to the shed. "I can see footprints in the soft ground." Maya held her breath, trying to keep the bear cub as still as possible. The mother bear had positioned herself by the door, ready to defend her family and her new human allies. Dr. Martinez finished preparing the injection. "This will help reduce the inflammation and make breathing easier," she whispered. "But I need the cub to be very still." Maya watched in amazement as Lily, without being asked, reached out and gently stroked the bear cub's head while humming her lullaby. The sick animal immediately relaxed, as if the baby's touch had some kind of magical calming effect. Dr. Martinez administered the injection quickly and efficiently. The cub barely flinched. "Good," Dr. Martinez whispered. "Now we wait for the medication to take effect." But their waiting was interrupted by a loud bang as someone kicked the shed door. "This door's unlocked," a gruff voice said. "Someone check inside." Maya's heart stopped. They were about to be discovered. But before anyone could open the door, they heard a commotion outside. Shouting, running footsteps, and what sounded like someone crashing through the underbrush. "What the hell was that?" the same gruff voice demanded. "I don't know, boss. Sounded like it came from over by the main access road." "Well, go check it out, and be careful. There might be more than one bear around here." The footsteps moved away from the shed, heading toward whatever disturbance had drawn their attention. Maya looked at Jake questioningly. He shrugged, looking just as confused as she felt. Dr. Martinez took advantage of the temporary reprieve to check the cub's breathing again. "The medication is working," she whispered. "Its lung function is already improving." The mother bear seemed to sense that her cub was getting better. She relaxed slightly, though she remained alert to the danger outside. After about 10 minutes, they heard vehicles starting up and driving away. The voices of the searchers grew fainter and finally disappeared altogether. "Did they leave?" Maya asked quietly. Jake carefully looked out the small window. "I think so, but I wonder what caused that distraction that made them leave." Their question was answered a few minutes later, when they heard a familiar voice calling from outside the shed. "Jake? Maya? It's Tommy from your crew. Are you guys okay?" Jake opened the shed door cautiously. Tommy, his lead heavy equipment operator, was standing outside with 2 other landfill workers. "Tommy, how did you find us?" "We saw those unmarked trucks circling the landfill and figured something was wrong," Tommy explained. "When we tried to radio you and got no response, we came looking. We spotted that veterinarian's van parked by the trees and figured you might be nearby. What happened to the men who were searching for us? Tommy grinned. Let's just say they had an encounter with our biggest bulldozer. When they saw us coming with heavy machinery, they decided it was time to leave. But boss, what's this about? Why were those guys looking for you? Jake looked at Maya, then at Dr. Martinez, who was still monitoring the bear cub's condition. Tommy, we witnessed illegal chemical dumping, and those men threatened us to keep us quiet, Jake said. But that's not even the most unbelievable part of this story. Tommy's eyes widened as he noticed the mother bear for the first time. Holy cow, Jake, is that a real bear? It's a long story, Maya said, but the short version is that we saved her cub from a chemical spill, and now we're all working together to make sure it recovers. Dr. Martinez stood up from examining the cub. The good news is that the treatment is working. This little one should make a full recovery, but I'd like to monitor it for a few more hours to make sure there are no complications. Dr. Martinez, Maya said, what about the illegal dumping? Shouldn't we report this to environmental authorities? Absolutely. This kind of chemical contamination could affect groundwater for miles around. We need to document everything and get the proper agencies involved. Tommy was still staring at the mother bear. Dr. Martinez, is it safe for us to be this close to a wild bear? Under normal circumstances, I'd say no, Dr. Martinez replied. But this situation is far from normal. This mother bear has demonstrated remarkable intelligence and restraint. She seems to understand that we're helping her cub. As if to prove Dr. Martinez's point, the mother bear walked over to where Maya was sitting with the cub and gently nuzzled Maya's shoulder. It was clearly a gesture of gratitude. Lily giggled and reached out to pat the mother bear's nose. The massive animal allowed the touch, even making a soft chuffing sound that seemed almost like laughter. I've been working with wildlife for 20 years, Dr. Martinez said in amazement, and I've never seen anything like this bond between humans and wild bears. Jake's radio crackled to life. Jake, this is dispatch. We've got environmental protection agents and police heading to your location. They received an anonymous tip about illegal chemical dumping at the landfill. Maya and Jake looked at each other in surprise. Anonymous tip? Jake, the radio continued. The authorities want to interview anyone who might have witnessed the dumping. They're treating this as a major environmental crime. Dr. Martinez smiled. It sounds like someone else saw what those men were doing and decided to report it. You're not the only witnesses. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, Maya sat with the bear cub in her arms, watching its breathing become stronger and more regular. The little animal's eyes were brighter now, and it was even making small, playful sounds. Lily continued her lullaby, and the mother bear had settled down nearby, finally relaxing enough to groom herself while keeping one eye on her recovering cub. Maya, Jake said softly, I keep thinking about what you said earlier, about holding people accountable for what they did to these animals and the environment. I meant every word of it. I know you did, and I think what happened here today, with Lily's compassion, and the mother bear trusting us, and all of us working together to save the cub, I think it's going to change how people think about protecting wildlife and the environment. Dr. Martinez was taking photographs of the cub's condition and collecting samples of the contaminated soil they had brought with them from the chemical spill site. Maya, Jake, she said, I want you to know that what you did today probably saved this cub's life. Chemical exposure like this is often fatal in young animals. If you hadn't gotten it away from the contamination site and called for help when you did, it wouldn't have survived. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. Looking down at the small bear in her arms, she couldn't imagine a world where this beautiful creature had died because of human carelessness and greed. The sound of approaching vehicles interrupted her thoughts. Through the shed window, she could see several official-looking cars and trucks arriving at the landfill. "Looks like our interview with the authorities is about to begin," Jake said. But before they left the shed, Maya had one more concern. "Dr. Martinez, what happens to the mother bear and her cub after today? Will they be okay on their own?" "The cub will need to be monitored for a few more days to make sure there are no delayed effects from the chemical exposure," Dr. Martinez explained. "I'd like to set up a temporary observation area where the mother can stay with her cub while it finishes recovering." "Where would you do that?" "Actually, I was thinking about asking Jake if we could use a quiet section of the landfill that's been closed for revegetation. It would be close enough for me to check on them daily, but isolated enough that they wouldn't be disturbed by normal landfill operations." Jake nodded immediately. "Of course, whatever you need." Maya looked at the mother bear, who seemed to be listening to their conversation with remarkable attention. "Do you think she understands what we're planning?" Maya asked. Dr. Martinez smiled. "I think this bear understands more than we give her credit for. She's demonstrated problem-solving abilities and emotional intelligence that most people don't realize bears possess." As they prepared to leave the shed and meet with the authorities, Maya realized that this day had changed her in ways she was still beginning to understand. She had always loved animals, but she had never imagined forming such a deep connection with a wild creature. And Lily, somehow, her 14-month-old daughter, had been the catalyst for this entire incredible experience. If Lily hadn't pointed out the bear cub in the first place, if she hadn't insisted on trying to help, none of this would have happened. "Lily, sweetheart," Maya said to her daughter, "you helped save a life today?" Lily looked up at her mother and then at the bear cub, making happy babbling sounds as if she understood exactly what had happened. The mother bear stood up and walked to the shed door, looking back at them expectantly. It was clear she was ready to face whatever came next, as long as her cub was safe and her new human friends were by her side. Maya carefully stood up, still holding the bear cub, and followed the mother bear out of the shed. Jake carried Lily, and Dr. Martinez gathered her medical equipment. Together, this unlikely family, 2 humans, a human baby, a mother bear, a bear cub, and a wildlife veterinarian, walked toward the approaching authorities to tell their incredible story of survival, cooperation, and hope. As they emerged from the trees, Maya could see several environmental protection agents and police officers waiting by their vehicles. Camera crews from local news stations had also arrived, their equipment ready to document what would become one of the most extraordinary wildlife rescue stories ever recorded. The lead environmental agent, a woman named Director Sarah Walsh, approached them carefully. Her eyes widened as she took in the unprecedented sight of humans walking peacefully alongside wild bears. "Doctor," Martinez called ahead to explain the situation, Director Walsh said. "But seeing it with my own eyes is something else entirely." Maya gently transferred the bear cub to Dr. Martinez's specialized carrier, designed to keep the young animal comfortable while allowing continued medical monitoring. The cub made soft, contented sounds, no longer the desperate cries they had heard that morning. The mother bear watched this process intently but remained calm. She seemed to understand that her baby was in good hands. "Director Walsh," Jake said, "we have detailed information about the illegal chemical dumping, including soil samples and photographs of the contaminated site." But before the official interviews could begin, something magical happened that would be remembered long after the legal proceedings were complete. Lily, still in her father's arms, began humming her lullaby one more time. The bear cub responded from its carrier with gentle chirping sounds, as if they were singing together. The mother bear added her own soft, rumbling harmony. The news cameras captured it all: the baby's innocent song, the bear's responses, and the looks of wonder on every adult face. In that moment, the arbitrary boundaries between human and animal, between civilized and wild, seemed to dissolve completely. Dr. Martinez wiped tears from her eyes. In 30 years of wildlife rehabilitation, I've never witnessed anything like this. This baby, she looked at Lily, somehow knew exactly what that bear cub needed. Her compassion transcended every barrier that usually exists between our species. Director Walsh began the interview process, documenting every detail of the morning's events. Maya and Jake provided information about the illegal dumpers, their threats, and the chemical contamination. The evidence they had gathered would lead to the largest environmental prosecution in the state's history. But the real story, the one that would be shared around the world, was about something much more profound than environmental crime. 3 months later, Maya stood at the edge of the restored section of Riverside Landfill, watching Lily toddle through the new grass that had been planted where toxic waste had once been buried. The area had been completely cleaned and was now a small nature preserve. In the distance, she could see 2 familiar black shapes foraging peacefully among the trees. The mother bear and her cub, now healthy and strong, had chosen to make this cleaned-up area their permanent home. Dr. Martinez had established a research station nearby to study their behavior and ensure their continued well-being. Jake walked up beside Maya, carrying a folder full of letters from children around the world who had heard about Lily's role in saving the bear cub. Schools were using their story to teach about environmental protection and the importance of compassion for all living creatures. "Another letter from that elementary school in Japan?" Jake said with a smile. "The kids want to know if Lily still sings to the bears." As if summoned by his words, they heard Lily's familiar humming drifting across the preserve. Maya looked over to see her daughter sitting under a tree, singing her lullaby to a group of rabbits that had gathered nearby. From the trees, they heard an answering sound, the now grown bear cub responding to Lily's song with its own gentle call. The mother bear emerged from the woods and sat at a respectful distance, listening to the music that had first brought their families together. She had never forgotten the humans who had saved her baby's life, and the bond between them remained as strong as ever. Maya felt Jake's hand slip into hers as they watched their daughter continue her magical connection with the wild creatures who had become part of their extended family. "Do you think she knows?" Jake asked quietly. "Do you think Lily understands what she did that day?" Maya watched her daughter look up at the sound of the bear cub's call and wave happily toward the trees where her old friends were hidden. "I think she knows something even more important," Maya replied. "She knows that love and kindness can cross any boundary, heal any wound, and create connections that change the world." The sun was setting over the preserve, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. As they prepared to head home, Maya heard one last exchange between Lily and the bears, her daughter's sweet lullaby answered by the gentle sounds of the wild creatures who would always remember the day a human baby's compassion saved their lives. Walking back to their car, Maya realized that what had started as an ordinary morning walk had become something extraordinary, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices, the most innocent hearts, and the purest love can accomplish miracles that adults think are impossible. The bear cub was alive and thriving. The environmental criminals were facing justice. The landfill had been transformed into a place of beauty and healing. And somewhere in the preserve behind them, the sound of a baby's lullaby continued to bridge the ancient gap between human and wild, creating harmony where there had once been only fear and misunderstanding. It was, Maya thought as she buckled Lily into her car seat, the most beautiful ending to the most incredible story she could have ever imagined. But as they drove away, she knew it wasn't really an ending at all. It was the beginning of a lifetime of wonder, compassion, and connection that would ripple outward from this small preserve to touch hearts and change lives around the world. Behind them, the mother bear and her cub settled down for the night in their safe, clean home, still humming the melody that a human baby had taught them, the song that had saved their lives and taught everyone who heard it that love truly knows no boundaries.